Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to be talking with a person who is known as, quote, the accidental icon, representing women who are 50 years and older, women like her who are not famous celebrities but are smart, creative, fashion-forward, fit, thoughtful, engaged, related, and mostly importantly, clear and comfortable who they are. She's going to share some of the secrets to good health and longevity, from staying healthy through yoga, cellular nutrition by taking something known as Celtrient, and self-care practices. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Lynn Slater. Lynn, thank you for being on the program today.
Thanks for having me.
Right on. Well, let's talk about how this all got started for you here.
Well, I think it probably started when I turned 60, and simultaneously to doing Accidental Icon until last year, I've been a professor of social welfare. And I was feeling a little bit bored with just life in general, and I wanted to do something creative. And so I started to just take classes in a fashion school, and in all of the classes that I took, the professors and the students would say, "Oh, you have such great style, you should start a blog." And so I said, well, that's interesting. I like to write. I do like fashion and clothing, and my partner happens to be a photographer, so that actually could be something fun to do, and I'll use it as a way to really explore the fashion system. And so that's really how it started, as a way for me to express myself creatively, and it became something way more than that.
I see. It sounds pretty exciting, especially in a confusing world, where people are telling you every which way to go, but you're not really sure which is the right one for you. So did you feel that this was a more natural path?
Yes, because, what was interesting by going into a field that you don't know anything at all about is that you're not really knowing what the possibilities are. And so unlike other people who have real goals about followers and what they want to do, I was just putting myself into the mix and seeing what came my way. So it was a very, very organic process where I just kind of went with the flow and chose opportunities that were a creative challenge. Because I had a full-time job as an academic, I could afford to say no to a lot of things that to me weren't interesting, and to focus on things that really allowed me to stretch my creative muscles.
Gotcha. Now I'm kind of curious, as you're obviously in midlife. Before that happened, how did you envision what midlife looked like? What were your thoughts or possible expectations?
I had none. And I think that's a very interesting thing because, unlike a lot of other big transitions in our life, sort of like, getting a degree or, how do you manage to have a good relationship? There's a lot of how-to books and advice, how to be a good parent. But you never think that you need sort of a manual about how to be old, because I think we all avoid it until it actually happens to us. So I really, again, I started this not thinking about age at all. It was really something for other people who enjoy thinking and talking about fashion. And I guess because of my gray hair and my unretouched photos, it became a much bigger thing about age, although I didn't intend that to happen. So, when journalists would say to me, well, how do you feel about age? I would say, just look at my photos. I'm kind of performing it, and I'm, improvising as I go. And I think for me, that's how I'm approaching aging. Is really, it's an unknown territory. We're all quite different, and I think we saw that, during the pandemic. And we all have different aspects about ourselves that you really can't put us into one homogeneous group. And so for me, I'm really playing it by ear, and much the same way as when I started my blog, and just kind of remaining in the world, traveling and, being interested in the things I'm interested in, and seeing what happens. So that's really my approach, because to be frank with you, I when I was younger, I would say, oh, someday I'll be married, someday I'll get my doctorate, and I could imagine all that. But never once did I ever say to myself, oh, one day I'm going to be old, and this is what it's going to be like.
Right.
So, so I think it's sort of a new territory for me, and I really don't mind inventing my own way of doing it.
I know I'm reminded of a scene in one of the last installments of the Rocky series. Rocky Balboa was the title, where he decides to get back into the ring for, basically an exhibition fight against the champion. And his son says at one point, as he's talking to him about that possibility of, getting back in the ring, and his son simply says, well, don't you think you're a little old? Like there's this societal expectation about, what older aging is. And the fact is, it's much different, especially with people like yourself who get out there. You become, accidental icons, if you will, and you're just kind of reinventing yourself like we've basically done or tried to do most of our lives. And I would say that would have been one of your secrets right there, is to be willing to change, to try new things, for lack of a better word, facing your fears. But I know that yoga is one arena that you actually use to keep you in good health as well. What about that and some other things that you do when it comes to, being healthy? Because one thing, it's funny, I remember as a child thinking about, I want to live to be 100, but what you don't think about is what would you feel like when you're that age.
Right.
But as you get older, you start realizing, I didn't think about that before. It's one thing to be 100 years old. It's another thing to have the kind of energy and wherewithal to be able to get out and do anything once you're that age.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting. I think there's a whole middle ground where I feel I am, in terms of what aging can look like, that really has not been very visible, because I think you have the two poles. One is you're going to be frail, demented, a drain on society and economic productivity and a caregiving burden and, that scenario. And now I've noticed there's all of this, sort of, okay, if you do this, that, the other thing, you're going to not get old. And the fact is that you don't have control over getting old. You are going to get old, even if you do all those great things. And I do many of them, right? I exercise, I do yoga, I keep myself in the world. I'm constantly learning new things to keep my brain active. I surround myself with people of all ages. I walk for miles. I just love it. I, work in my garden these days. And I think that, the reality is that there's many amazing things about being older that I just really, really enjoy. There's also some things that are not so great, but, that's all part of it. And so I think that it's dangerous to think that if you do X, Y, Z, Q, and P, you're going to sort of stave off the aging process. I think the reality is there's many things you can do to be as healthy as you can possibly be for as long as you can possibly be. And that's a more honest, I think, approach to longevity.
So now let's go ahead and talk about, I know that one of the areas that you have really engaged in is cellular nutrition. What's the importance of that? How do you go about doing something like that?
Well, I think for me, one of the things that happened during the pandemic was I became ill, and not with COVID, thankfully, but something that involved my biome and my digestive health. And so after doing a lot of research about that, I changed to a plant-based diet, which has made a huge difference in how I feel. And I started to look into, the process of what does happen to your cells inside of you as you get older, because everybody tends to focus on the outside, that you get wrinkles and your hair gets gray, but they might spend a lot of money dealing with that, but I think we need to look at what is happening inside. And so when I saw there were certain things that I could do, and Celtrant was one of them, I particularly found myself having a bit less energy than I had, which is a natural part of aging. And so I wanted to try the product that would help me, just sort of, it doesn't give you more energy, but I experienced like an evenness of energy that I hadn't had before. So, again, as accidental icon, there's all this focus on how you look outside and clothes and beauty products. But I think we have to really think about, what's happening inside of our body to ourselves. And again, that's part of it. It's not that these things are going to stop you from becoming older, but they can help you to be as healthy as you can be, given your age.
Completely agree with you. If you're feeling great on the inside, the outside of it pretty much takes care of itself, almost as though to a degree it's on autopilot. I'm curious now if you have any kind of closing thoughts for our listeners out there, as I know that you're pretty busy as you're refashioning yourself as an accidental icon. Maybe websites people can go to find out more about some of the things that you do as well.
Well, again, I'm an academic and I'm a researcher, so I read a lot of academic literature about it, but there's been a series, first of all, the Celtrant website is a good place to start because it doesn't just, show you the supplement. It really explains the supplement, how it works. And it also, has this process where you can answer some questions and figure out what is maybe the right thing for you given who you are. And so I think, that's one place to start. I think there's been a lot of articles recently in the New York Times about longevity. If you just put a search, into Google and you look up the word longevity, there's a lot of things, and actually they really boil down to the same things. And basically that's how you're eating, are you doing exercise, Do you have a social life? Are you connected to other people? Do you have something that really interests you and makes you passionate? It's the same things, that I see over and over. And so, for me, the plant-based diet plus some supplemental assists for my inside, and then, really remaining very engaged in the world. And I know during COVID, we were all, those of us over 65, a little bit, kind of panicked because there were blanket statements that we were kind of all at risk. And actually, there's something called biological age. And you can take little tests online, and it really is your health status. And it's different than your chronological age, which is how old, how many years you have. So I actually took it, and based on my lifestyle choices and other variables, I have a biological age of 46.
Well, there you go.
And so, again, I think that rather than look at the chronological age, look at the biological age and all of the things that you can do to keep yourself healthy and happy.
Well, there you go. Well, Lynn, I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights here with our listeners today, and pretty wise yet practical advice on what people can do. And before you go, if you could give out those websites again one more time for our listeners, that would be great.
So I think the Celtrient website has a lot of great information. If you're interested in understanding what happens to your cells as you are getting older, again, I think if you take a look at the New York Times, they've been doing a lot of articles recently on longevity. I think, again, put in a search, longevity, and many, many articles will come up. So, yeah.
And the Celtrient website is CELLTRIENT, Celtrient.com is the website there.
Yes.
As I understand it. And then yours is accidentalicon.com, where they can find out more about how you go about your day and reinvent yourself and look forward to the next day. Thank you so much for being on the program today, Lynn. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. You can discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter and stay up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50, as well as our upcoming shows. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us.